computer. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Art 192, Photoshop/digital imaging for the fall semester of 2021. Today, we're going to work on lesson 2 from our textbook, which covers basic restoration retouching techniques. I have on my screen the before and after images that have been provided to all of you. The one to the left is the after image. The one to the right is the before. And so what I'll do is let me point out a few things that we will be correcting. One is that you can see that this image was scanned. You can see that it was scanned because it's askew, and we're going to learn how to crop and correct that first. To get the little border out of the way and to straighten it up. Second, you can see that the photograph was a little older and it's a little discolored. So we're going to crisp it up a bit, and we're going to make it bright and vibrant, make the colors bright and vibrant. In addition to that, you can see that there's a crease that goes down almost the center of the image. And if we zoom way in, we can see some dust and scratches and artifacts. And we're going to get rid of those as well. And those are very easy to do. Everything up to this point is very simple. The last part that we're going to do well and to do elegantly is where you can see in the final image over here that we have removed this fellow from the photograph. So apparently he wasn't part of the family, or they decided to disown him or whatever, I don't know. But that's what we're going to do. We're going to get you started with that, show you how to get rid of it, get rid of him. And it takes a little bit of time and patience, and we're going to use multiple tools to do that. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move this over just a little bit so we have a little bit more room. And I'm going to zoom in just a tad. And let's start by cropping this. So to do so, we're going to go ahead and we're going to use the crop tool. Now, by default, when you use the crop tool, what should be checked is this one right here. It says delete crop pixels. I do not like doing that. It makes your file, the way I'm doing it, a little bit larger, but if you always need to go back and to bring some of that photograph back, you can do so. Okay. So that's what we'll make sure that that's unchecked. The other thing that I want to point out too, where I differ from the textbook a little bit, is that, remember, I said maybe the other day, is that I rarely like to work on the original image. So I always take the background image and the layer panel and drag down and make a copy of it. And I work on that. So if I need to bring back any of the image at all, I can do so. Maybe what I should do is wait until I have cropped it and straightened it. So if I need to copy and paste anything, it will be already done. I mean, I can go back to that original image and not worry about it. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to delete this one. And let's go ahead and crop it and straighten it first. So to straighten it, the tool you use is this little button up here at the top in the options panel where it says straighten. And you click that little button, and then what you do is you click and you drag across the top straight part of your image and release, and it straightens it for you. The next thing that we want to do now, because I used this the other day, I had this 400 by 400 pixels at 300 pixels per inch. And I don't want that. I just want to change the proportions of this just a little bit. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to move each of the corners in just a little bit so we can remove any of the excess border that we don't need. On the right side, I want to try to keep as much of that as I can so I can use that to aid in getting rid of the guy to the right. Okay, so when I'm ready to crop, I just go ahead and I either click the checkbox or I hit the return key. Whoops, come on. I'll just click the checkbox. There we go. So it's gone. But again, because we said we can bring it back at any time, now when I click in here and I bring back that grid, notice that I can bring all of that back, or I can move the image around a bit if I wish. So I'm going to cancel that and go back to my cropped image. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy this. So if I need to copy any of the elements and bring them back into my my final image, I can do so. So there we go. So I'm going to work on layer 0, and I'm going to turn off, or copy of layer 0 and turn this off. Okay. For the rest of this, we can pretty much use a single layer. We don't need to add multiple layers. But if you prefer, you always can. The next step in retouching our image and restoring it is to bring back some of the bright colors and the vibrance. There's a variety of ways to do that, and we're going to use the adjustment layers to do so. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start by, and this is going to depart again from the book a little bit. What I would prefer to do is I'm going to use curves to do that. I like curves an awful lot. It's a little bit more robust than some of the others, like levels of brightness and contrast and stuff. But what we want to do, since it's aged, the photograph is aged a little bit and it's yellowed a tad, we want to get some of that yellow out of there. And again, there are more ways that I'm showing you right now, but by selecting the curves tool, I'm going to use find the dark point and the white point here to get the greatest amount of contrast that I can out of this image. So let's start with the white point. And the white point, it could be a number of different places. It could be in the little girl's dress. It could be in the corner and the shoulder of the girl who's standing at the bridge. And notice that already brightens it up considerably. That takes a lot of the yellow out. The next thing that I want to do is take the black point, and I'm going to find probably the darkest dark in here, which might be in the shadow of the boy's arm, or it could be any of the shadows here will be the darkest darks. So if I click there, that's a little bit too much. So I'm going to undo that. Let's undo the whole thing. And let's try auto first. And oh, I don't like that at all. So I'm going to reset that. And I prefer my choice better. So let's try that again. Let me start with the dark point this time. Let's find something really, really dark in here. Maybe right here would be a good one. And now let's try the white point again in her shoulder and see what we wind up with. That's not bad, but I'm going to go back to the boy, I think. Whoa, I didn't want that. That was the white point. So let me undo. Let's try that again. So this is what you're going to have to do from time to time. You're going to have to test. So I'm going to try again with the white point. I accidentally clicked in a light area. Whoops, wrong tool. Let's go back. So let's go back again and let's select the adjustment layer. Let's select curves. And let's go ahead and for our light point, I'm going to select the white point. I'm going to select the shoulder. That looks pretty good. And for the dark point, I am going to try to go back up here and see what I get. And that's just a little bit too dark. So I'm going to try again to go underneath the boy's arm. That brightens it up a little, maybe a little bit. Yeah. See, as you click around here, you get all the different results. And I don't like any of them. They're coming out way too dark. So let me try that again. I want to find the dark point. Maybe I don't need to use the dark point at all. So I'm going to go back, I'm going to reset, and I'm just going to use the white point. That, I think, for us should really do the job. That I think is the best solution. I'm going to leave the darks alone. Okay. So the next thing to note is when we look at curves, and you see that I have curves too. So that could be part of my problem. I wasn't paying attention. And you can see that here I had a second one. And you can layer curves and any adjustment layers on top of one another. I'm going to get rid of this one. And if I want to link this adjustment layer to a specific layer beneath it, I can always hold down the Option or Alt key. I can move the cursor between those two layers, and you'll notice that the little icon changes. And when I click on it, you can see that it affects just that layer. It indents a little bit. So that's not a bad idea. If you want to bring it back and undo that so it affects all the layers beneath it, then you hold down the Option or Alt key, move between the layers, and click again, and it resets it. So there we go. So we've straightened our image. We've also adjusted the colors so it's back to a little bit better, a little bit more brightness and vibrance in the image. The next thing that we want to do is get rid of all of the scratches and dust and the fold, the crease from in the middle of the photograph. So the tools that we're going to use for that are over here to the left. They're just beneath the eyedropper tool. And if I click and I hold down, you'll see that there are a variety of them. We're going to, for this exercise, we're going to use most of them. We're going to use a spot healing brush tool, the patch tool, and the content. Yeah, we'll use the patch tool. We could use content aware move, but we don't really need to do that. So we'll mostly be using the healing brush and the patch tool. And it's possible that we may be using the tool underneath here. I'll start with the spot healing brush tool. But we may need to use the clone stamp tool. They're all different ways of repairing and patching your image. So what you want to do with the spot healing brush, and it is really a miracle tool. It's been around for a while now. As I move this over, you can see a little round dot here that indicates the brush size. To increase the size of the brush, I hit the right bracket tool, which is to the right of my P key. And if I want to reduce the size of the brush, I hit the left bracket tool, which is also just to the right of my P key. So I'm going to increase it until it gets just a little bit bigger than the crease itself. And now what I can do is I can just go ahead and click and make sure that I have the right layer selected, and I don't. I have the curves. I have to make sure that I have the image layer selected. That's why it wasn't working. Now when I click, now if you can try to click and drag, but sometimes that doesn't work, it will leave kind of a blurred streak. So I just prefer to move in small incremental moves. I think I get better results that way. And click. And if you notice that it leaves a little mark, you can always come back and try it again. But as I'm doing this, I'm getting rid of some of these little dust marks here. And we'll go through this and get rid of all of the crease here. That's the biggest one. And the rest is to, pay close attention and try to get rid of all the other dust marks. Now I move up to here. I might want to change the brush size as I move over some of the background and the bridge and that sort of thing. It's a pretty amazing tool. It saves a whole lot of work. And prior to the spot healing brush, we had to use the clone stamp tool. And for certain things, it works really well. But this really makes it much easier for us to come back in here and to make those changes. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just, slowly going over, and if I need to increase the brush size, I do so. If I need to decrease the brush size, I can do that as well. I'm coming over part of this. And it's, like a miracle eraser. It really works beautifully. And they have been, gradually improving the properties of this, so it works really well. So it even leaves the mortar in the bricks, which is pretty cool. And if it's not quite right, again, I'll show you later how to use the clone stamp tool or the other healing brushes and stuff, and you'll be able to get rid of it. So here I go. Trying to get, move over this slowly but surely. It doesn't take really long. It seems like it, but it doesn't when you get into it. Some photographs, however, can be very, there can be a lot of work to do and to get rid of all of this. There are other ways of doing that, and we'll be watching videos at the end of the semester that cover in detail more advanced techniques for getting rid of some dust and scratches and things like that, especially when there's just a ton of them, and it would take you forever to sit, unless you just, it might be like knitting or something like that, where you kind of enjoy the tedium of it. So I've gotten rid of all of that. Let's see, I know that there's some dust and scratches and stuff up here. So I'm just going to click and drag over this. And this should be good because just a plain old blue sky, so nothing special. And I think I got rid of all of the other scratches and dust as well. So I'm at a point where I should really save this. So I can always go back. And remember, I can always, turn on the back layer, turn this one off. And you can see that it has the cropped version, but the back one has all of the dust and scratches and the crease in it. So I'm going to go ahead and save it now. I'll just call it my working file. File, save as. I'm going to save it where save it on my computer. And this is in this, I have it in the start folder. The other thing that you may notice that I failed to tell you, so we're going to do it now, is that this file happens to be a TIFF file. TIFF files are used extensively for print. At least they used to be, not so much anymore. But I don't want to save it as a TIFF file. I would recommend that you always save your original file as a Photoshop file. So what you do is you come down here where it says Format TIFF, and you click, and I want to save it as a Photoshop file. That's my only option right now. So it ends in PSD. So what I want to call it now is I'm going to call it 02 working file. Using camel casing, and I'll save it in the same folder. And I already have a version of that. So I'm going to call it version 3, since I've already done this a couple of times. Make sure that maximize compatibility. And now we're ready to get into the nitty-gritty of this, which is to get rid of him. So I'm going to zoom in so we can see this, see him. And there is a variety of ways to approach this. The way that they suggest that we do it is we go under the spot healing brush and we use the patch tool. So to use the patch tool, this is what you do. Make sure that I am not on an adjustment layer, but I'm on this layer. Now, if I'm happy with this and I want to go back to it anytime, I would make a copy of it again. So if I screw up here, I can always go back, and I don't have to redo from the start. I always have that to go back to. So that's not a bad idea to go ahead and call this, progress 1. Call this one progress 2. Name it whatever you want. And then I'll have maybe progress 3 and 4. But then I can always interchange and go back and forth between them. And I'm good to go. So I'm going to move my image over here. So to use the this tool here, which is right here underneath the others, called the patch tool, you do the following. You click and drag and quite loosely around the outside of whatever it is that you want to remove, including the shadow. Okay, notice that I'm leaving quite a bit of space. I don't want it to be too snug up against him. I'm just moving my mouse around, not using a Wacom tablet or anything. And after I've gone all the way around him, what I see are the marching ants, indicating that just a selection of him exists now. Now what I can do is I can click and drag and move it across. And as I do, it's taking from the area that I'm moving it to and replacing him with it. So when I've removed all of him, just about all of him, now I can release. And you can see what it's done. But there's a couple of issues that we have to deal with. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and deselect. And I made sure when I did that this bottom edge matched. I wasn't that careful with this one, but what I can do is I can replace it. Or I can leave it. It's, you know, but you'll notice that when you do that, that you have duplicate areas here that indicate that this has been retouched. You see this little area here in the bricks and here and here and here that we need to get rid of. So what I want to do is I'll go back to the spot healing brush again, and let's go ahead and get rid of some of this. Maybe even get rid of some of that. Get rid of some of this so that it doesn't appear to be copied. So the next thing that I might want to do is fix this right here. So to fix that, what I could do is I could do the same thing. I could use the patch tool, and I could a little bit more carefully copy a chunk of it here. Or what I could do, you know what? Yeah, I could. Let's deselect that. I'll do that. I'm going to copy a bit of it here. This, like so. I want to get rid of that, include the shadow. And now I'm going to move that over like so. Whoops, I did the wrong one. Oh, Kirk. Deselect. Because I want the edge of this shadow to match the others. So I'll go ahead and I did it the opposite way. I'm going to come back up here and select like so. Then I'm going to move it over like so and make sure that it matches. Now you can see that the shadow matches. The only problem is I brought this back. So, you know, it takes a little bit of finagling. And every semester I do it a little bit differently. So I'm going to come back here, get rid of that first. I've got rid of that. This matches very nicely now. Now I need to make sure that this area right back here, that looks like it's kind of a, I'm not sure what it is, kind of a wall, goes all the way to the end here. Now, another tool that I can use is I can use something called it's right here, on here. It's the clone stamp tool. It looks like a little rubber stamp. So I think, you know, I'm going to work my way up and then, or I can go up here and work my way down. It's entirely up to you. So let me go ahead and zoom in a little bit so I can see, you know, a little bit better here. So I think what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to start up here. And you can see that these have been cut off a little bit. And the book does it a little bit differently, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take these windows and I'm going to repeat them all the way to this point right here. So to do that, I'm going to use the clone stamp tool. I'm going to select the tool here. And to use it is a two-step process. Number one, I need to change the size of the brush to make sure that just about all of that area fits in there. So I want to work it from here. Okay. And now I need to capture that area. So to do so, I hold down the Alt or Option key, depending on what you're using, Mac or PC. So I hold down the Option key on the Mac and I click. Now when I move over, you see that that little piece is moving with it. So now I can click and to get it all matched up nicely. And I can move up a little bit. You can see that it's taking that, but that's not what I want. So I have to go back again. Let's try again. Oh, I see why it's doing that. Because it's being affected by, let's turn this off, by our curves. So what I could do is I could flatten that part, but I'm going to try this again. Let's see what we can do here. Let's make sure that we take a little bit from here. I'm going to make the brush a little bit smaller. This is where it gets kind of tedious. I'm going to go ahead and reduce the size of this. And I'm going to work from the top down just a little bit. So I'm going to hold down the Option key and click and move over. And that's not working. So because, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and since I made a copy of this already, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these two right here, and I'm going to hold down the Shift key to make sure that both of them are selected. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Command E, and what that does is it collapses the two together. But I still have the other one here. Okay, now I can come back here. Let's try this again. Hold down the Option key. Let's go ahead and make the brush a little bit bigger. It might take us a couple of tries to do this. Hold down the Option key. There we go. Let's move this over just a tad. And it might take us a few steps to do that. Now I'll move down. And as I move down, notice that I'm replacing. I'll move over. And I'm taking some of that away and replacing. And again, because this is in the background, and see, I already screwed up. It's going up, and in perspective, it should be going down. So I'll just undo several times. Whoops, I don't want to do that. Let's bring it back. So I want to go down a little bit. So in perspective. And it'll take me a few tries here. And I'll do the same up above. I'll bring part of those down or not. We'll see. And let's come up here and make the brush a little bit smaller. And hold down the Option key and make a new selection. And I'm going to proceed to come back in here and just, very subtly replace part of this. And then, even if it's a little bit blotchy, I can come back in with the spot healing brush. And I can move in here and make the brush a little bit smaller. And we can click and just repair some of that, just to soften it, make it look okay. Now what I need to do is I need to take some of this and move it down. So one of the things that I can do is I can take, and if I want to give this a try, and again, this isn't covered in the book, but I'm showing you how, is that I can take the polygonal lasso tool and I can take a little piece of this like so. Okay, so I've got that selection. And now what I want to do is I want to hold down the Option, or what might be a better way of doing this is to go ahead and hit Command J, and that puts it on a new layer when I do that. You really can't see the difference. But if I turn that layer off, you can see that it's on its own layer. So now what I can do is I can use the Move tool, move that layer in place. And now I need to rotate it. So I'm going to use the free transform. That's Command T. And we'll rotate it just a little. Whoops, I didn't want to do that. I want to rotate it just a little bit so it matches the underneath. Move it into position. How about if I zoom in a little bit? Whoops, didn't want to do that. Let me zoom in just a little bit. There we go. Now again, let me go ahead and rotate it so that it matches. And that's looking pretty good. So now I'll go ahead and I'll hit return, the return key. Now I just need to clean this up a little bit. So to do that, we'll use the spot healing brush again. And slow but sure, I'm making changes to this. And when we zoom back out, hopefully because it is in the background, you won't see much of a difference. And if you really want to take a lot of time with it, you won't see any difference at all. You can really massage these things until the cows come home. But you can see when I'm using the spot healing brush, it just cleans it up really nicely. And I can use the blur and a whole variety of things. And probably what I want to do with this is I want to blend it with this one too. So I'm working on this top layer, but in order to blend it with the ones underneath, I need to hold down the Shift key, select this one and hit Command E again to combine them together. Now when I click in here, notice that I'm getting a softer edge and a better blend between them. Just has to look right. That's the thing about art, is that there are lots of rules in art, but the bottom line is if it looks right and it looks believable, then you're good to go. And if I want to bring this dark into here, I could use the clone stamp. I could use any number of tools. The next thing that I might want to do is take from here and use the clone stamp again and bring some of this over here to finish this up. So let's do that again. I'm going to go ahead and use the clone stamp. And I'm going to use a little bit bigger brush. And I want to, let's see, I'm going to start from here. I'm going to take a big chunk from here and let's see if I can get this to work. So I have that, and as I move that over, I want to make sure that it aligns with the other one. Move down just a little bit, move down a bit more until I get that. Let's move back up. And I'm going to move up again. And again, you can see at the top, I still have some touch up to do, but that's okay. Overall, it's coming out, not so bad. And every time I click, you can see where it's pulling from. There's a little crosshair to the right. Okay, so I have the majority of it done. How am I doing on time? I'm doing good today. You can see that I have the bulk of that done. It looks pretty believable, but there's still a bit more to do. So I'll zoom in a little bit, not to bore you too much, but I'm going to use, again, the spot healing brush again. And we're going to come back in here. We're going to fix some of this. Till we get this to work. You just have to get nice soft blend here for it to look believable, and soften the edges. You don't want really sharp edges here. And if none of that works, again, we can always go back to the clone stamp tool and reduce the size of it based on what I've done before. Hold down the Option or Alt key, click. I can move over a little bit and just gradually fix part of this. And once I've straightened this edge, come back with the spot healing brush tool again and soften the edge a little bit. So that's what I'm going to do. Actually, that looks pretty decent. So it looks a little bit not too perfect. As if you compare it to the old or where we had started off, and you can see that's a little too abrupt down here too. So that needs to be softened as well. So we can come back in here, soften this a little bit. And if I don't like any of those, let's come back here. Just to soften the edge, blur it. And if that doesn't work, we can use another tool. And here's another one here called the blur tool. And I can come back in here and with a small little brush, I can come in back in here and I can blur that. So it softens and it removes that harsh edge and makes it look all a little bit more believable. Move this over just a tad. And, you know, you want to remove the repetitiveness of that. So if I were doing this for a client or myself, I would probably take a little bit more time to get rid of some of that. But I think what I am going to do is I'm going to take this area here that's lighter and I'm going to replace it with the dark area here. So to do that, I'm going to try under here and I'm going to try the patch tool. So I'm going to go back here and select this area right here. I'm going to move it over like so. That looks pretty good. Now I just need to use the spot healing brush to clean that up a little bit. And you go over it enough times and again, it just has to look right. And there's a little bit up here that needs to be softened. Maybe I should use the blur tool for that as well. And if I could come back, maybe I should, but not today. I could come back and I could take the windows up here and maybe drag some of this down a little bit. And that would be pretty good. And actually all of these probably should be fixed a little bit and moved down, and the spot healing brush here. So I know it's a little tedious and a little boring, but just fixing this little by little until I get something that looks believable. And when I zoom out, you won't be able to tell the difference. So when I'm all done, and for today, I think this is probably enough. I would futz with it a little bit more. I'm going to go ahead and hit Command S to save it, since I've already saved it as my working file. And I'm set to go. And remember, if I needed to bring any of this back, I could always turn this layer off, and I have this to bring it back to. Now you can see that because I combined a couple of layers, I no longer have the adjustment layer that I was using. So if I were really thinking about this ahead of time, what I would have preferred to do is keep those layers, and I'll show you something. I'm going to go ahead and turn this layer off for a second. Okay. Now, I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to add the adjustment layer to this. So this will be the last thing that I do today. So I'll go back to the adjustment layer. I'm going to go back to curves. Since I got rid of that, now I got to do it again. I'm going to select the white point. Remember, that's all we added for that. And that was enough. And that was plenty. That's good. Well, if I want to keep these, if I want to combine these layers, but I want to keep the originals intact, then this is what you do. And this is what I normally do, but I didn't do that today. So, oh well. I'm going to select this layer. I'm going to hold down the Shift key or the Command key and select the layer beneath it. And now what I want to do is, instead of just hitting Command E, I'm going to hit Shift Option Command E. And when I do that, notice what it just did. It took these two layers and copied and blended them together into a brand new layer, but it kept the originals intact. So this would be the one that I could use in conjunction with this one. See how well it works? And now if I take this layer and I turn the top layer off, if there's any part of this that I want to copy and paste, I can always do so. So for example, I said I was only going to do one more thing. Let's say up here, I wanted to take a section of this, maybe this part of the windows right here, and here, and here, and here, and here. And I'm going to take and go across. Oops. So I'm going to copy this part right here. So I've got my selection there going. So if I go ahead and I copy this or hit Command J, it will copy it to a new layer. And now I can move this on the very top. And now let's turn this one back on. And let's see what I have here. See, you can't see it. It's perfectly positioned. But I can use the Move tool to show you that it is in fact there. And here it is. So now if I wanted to, I could take this and move this over just a little bit and get it into position. Let's move this. I want this to be down just a little bit. And now what I could do, I could leave it on a separate layer, and I could come back with the eraser tool. We haven't used it yet. And because it's on its own layer, I can come up over here and I can increase the size of the eraser a little bit and make sure that I have the correct layer selected. And I can come back here and I can begin to erase some of this a little bit. So it brings some of that back. And then when I'm ready, I can combine these layers. And I can come back here and erase a little bit of this. Erase a little bit of that. And then blend them together. So, you know, it's using a variety of tools and getting the results that you want. And oftentimes that takes a little bit of patience and watching grass grow, like with me, until you get the desired results. And then you can save it with all the layers or not. or when you're all done, you can combine everything. And that would be an option for you. But because the way I like to work is I like keeping everything intact. And when you turn your work in, I would prefer that you kept everything intact. So I'm going to select this first layer, hold down the Shift key, and I'm going to select the last layer. And I'm going to do just what I showed you. I'm going to hold down the Shift, Option, Command, and then hit the E key. That made a copy of all of them, whether they were visible or not. And now I have, I can hold down the Option key to turn off all the others. And you can see that that's intact. This is a combination of all of them. And this is my final result. So we have a nicely retouched image. Again, I would probably want to do a little bit more in the background here, so it doesn't look, I don't get anything that's too repetitive. But for today, we did a fair amount of work. It looks pretty nice. Before we leave today, are there any questions? I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording. So we're good today. We ended a few minutes early. So that's this, you're responsible today to do lesson 2. And as you complete them, if you're not able to keep up with me, then put them in your Google Drive as soon as you can. And I don't give you individual grades for the lessons. I only grade at the end of the semester. I tally which ones you've done, and you should have done 1 through 12. And if you've done all 12, you get a full 10 points, same as any other assignment. Then that'll be it. For every lesson you don't do, you'll get a deduction of 1 point. So that's it. So as you complete them, and you have all semester to complete the lessons, go ahead and put them in your Google Drive folder. And then that's it for today. And we're going to work on selections on Wednesday, and then we'll move forward. And once we get to layers, I will give you your first assignment. And that the first assignment is going to be the postcard assignment, or if you want to do a variation of that and do the selfie photo bomb, you're welcome to do so. And then that will be due in a few weeks. Okay, so I'm going to say goodbye. You guys are free to leave, and I will pause the recording and see some of you or all of you on Wednesday. Okay, that's it.